Hello, viewers. This is Jaipur Dialogue USA. I'm Vibhuti Jha. Today, talking about the very tragic killing, murder of Salman Momika in Sweden. I was following him on Twitter, and I knew that he had written many messages that he knows that one of these days he will be killed. But he sought support in a democratic country like Sweden in the West and sought support he didn't get. Eventually, he was killed. He surrendered his life. He gave up his life for what he believed in about Islam as a terrorist outfit. Now, why I'm saying Islam as a terrorist outfit, and I'm demanding that as humans we must respond to this. It's our responsibility. From Charlie Hebdo onwards to Nupur Sharma and now Salman, this is a tragic element that people must respond. Enough is enough when it comes to Islamic terrorism and their vandalism on us. Look, I have no problem with the way you want to live your life, practice your religion, practice your faith. My only objection is don't impose it on me or people like me who do not agree with your theology or your practices. So, it is important for all of us to arise, awaken a certain act. It is incumbent upon all humans all over the world. Now, there are a few things that I wanted to mention here. Soon after 9/11, soon after 9/11, a Muslim friend of mine told me, and those who know me know this story, and I'm sharing it with larger public today. He said, "This is the beginning of our fight against all things democracy and the Western world." He also said that we as an Islamic country do not have the ability or the strength to fight a non-Islamic country in a conventional war. What we will therefore do is to fight in a guerrilla warfare tactics, and we will terrorize you. How many John Does will you protect with posting your Marine? You can't. Then he also added, we will use your freedoms as the weapons against you. This was told to me soon after 9/11. Mind you, this is how far the story goes in terms of their thinking, tactics, and strategy. He also said that we will use freedom as the tool to insult you, to humiliate you, and defeat you. You pride in your freedoms, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and we will do everything to demolish your structure. And your guys, he said this specifically, that whites, blacks, Jews, Hindus will fight our cases for free to protect our freedoms. Think how deep is their love for us. It's important and very saddening too, because when your enemy enters your house and begins to destroy your house, you have to protect and defend yourself. There is no alternate to that. Salman Momika's death is one of those moments. It started with the protest against Charlie Hebdo because he drew the cartoons. The freedom of speech was challenged at that point in time. He was murdered, gunned down. And since then, many people have been killed, threatened for quoting Sharia and Quran itself, whatever is written there. Not that anybody is imagining and saying it. Even you and I can be threatened that how dare you talk to us, talk about us. The question is, if you live in my society, you can't take away what is mine. And that's the reason why I'm saying Salman Momika's death is in the chain of killings that have happened, is driven by an ideology that you cannot ask me a question. Now, if that is the case, why are you here? What would you and I do if some unwanted guest begins to question the way I live my life, the way you live your life? So right now it is Salman Momika or Charlie Hebdo or Anupur Sharma in India. Tomorrow it could be you and I, just because we said something without malice, because we asked or made an inquiry, or we quoted their text. They are here to silence you in the name of phobia and blasphemy. Think about it from that perspective. And their agents are already operating all over in democratic world. So here is the strategic way they operate. First things they have figured out in democracy: vote matters. Democracy, the members of parliament and the government, they want to be elected. For being elected, they need votes. And these people vote as a vote bank. We know that about in India. We know that it is beginning to happen in many Western democracies where they vote en bloc. I remember in the 2016 election, or was it 2020? I don't know. In 2020 election, I remember when Rashida Tlaib, the honorable Congress lady from in the U.S. Congress, openly talked about that all Georgian Muslims, the state of Georgia, must vote for Biden. It is the call for Islam to do that. And I wondered if I had made that statement that all Hindus vote for either or candidate, that would be treated as a serious case of incursion in the political life of America. But they take advantage of that. And we, globally, somewhere along the line, it is very interesting that all powers that be pander, appease, and try to mollify them to include them, inclusive element. And I have always wondered, there cannot be compromise between two drops of poison in a gallon of milk. So those people who do not conform to our way of life here, then they have no right to tell us how we must lead our life. So I talked about the vote bank, and then there is violence on the street. The second V, I call it the 3V tactical approach they take. First is the vote bank. Second is the violence on the street. In democracies, we like to protect life, and we have a rule of law that you have freedom of speech, but you don't have the freedom of speech to scream fire in a public event, because it's very easy to cause a stampede. Look at the Kumbh Mela, the way it has happened. That stampede led to death of so many people and injuries to many. So when millions of people are assembling in some congregation, it's very easy to cause a stampede. That's another part which is very important. Violence on the street. That's the I'm not saying the Kumbh they did, but I'm giving an example that it is very easy to go into violent mode, attack, burn, and kill. Challenge the authorities and the system, because they know very well that violence, when it happens, is very difficult to prove a crime. As what my friend told me, we will commit, go prove it. Your lawyers will try to prove that we are not guilty. The third is also the fact that they immediately claim victimhood. Now that's another pathetic thing. They cause the violence, they impose their will on you, and then they blame you and I for their state of affairs, without ever looking at the element to what extent you yourself are responsible for what's happening to you. Change in the world is a dynamic thing. Change happens. There was a time when we could not have had this conversation, but today we are having this conversation. And that's what is important, that we are able to disseminate information. The other part that I'm talking about, that we cannot allow people to silence the voice of reason and inquiry. You know, if you silence the freedom of speech through Islamophobia or any phobia element, or whatever you call it, you are killing the very fundamentals of freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is not about standing in a park and talking for an hour or two. Freedom of speech is about making an inquiry, asking a question, trying to know the truth, verify the facts. That's why you ask. That's what freedom of speech is all about. To ask what, when, how, why, and where it happened. So if you're prevented from asking even these fundamental questions, then the freedom of speech doesn't mean a thing. So if you have the full right to ask me why we Hindus are the way we are, or why the Jews are the way they are, why Christians are the way they are, then why aren't we having the right to ask you why you do the things the way you do? It is therefore for all humans to demand reciprocity. It's important. If you want to condemn me, then I have the right to say things about you too, because nobody is perfect, nothing is perfect. The other element that comes is very important, that you know so many more Muslims have been killed by the act of terrorism in Islamic countries. And that's true. More Muslims have been killed by terrorism in Islamic countries than non-Islamic people in other parts of the world. But that is not my problem. And that's the issue that I want to drive home at. What you do in your own home, in your own country, is not my business. It's not my problem. You can deal with your Shia, Sunni, or any other hundreds of sects that exist in Islam or Christianity or Hinduism. Do what you like in your own place. Why do you come to my place and try to tell me that I'm wrong? That must be protested because I don't care what you do in your own country. Iraq has declared that marrying a 9-year-old girl is okay for a 50-year-old man or whatever. Now, think about it from the different perspective. In the West, because of the abuse of children in religious establishments, they are now calling it the case of a sexual preference. How tragic is that? Because in Western countries and democracies, we have a rule of law that says that you cannot have sex with minor young ladies. It is a crime, punishable by very serious penalties. But they want to regularize it because Muhammad consummated a marriage with a 9-year-old Aisha, having married her when she was 6. The question is, how you led your life is none of my business. Don't come and tell me that it is okay for them to do that in my country. This is what is important. When you push your way of life on others, there will be conflict. That's what is important here. So what I want to tell you here is Salman Momika's life must not be allowed to go waste. It's for all humanity in every country of the world to say no more and this has to stop. If you can't subscribe to our way of life, then you have the equal right to leave the place, just as you left your home to come here. I do understand, everybody knows that some people want to spread their faith all over the world and they want to conquer the entire world. But sorry, my friend, that ain't happening. What has happened indeed is that the world has awakened, and this death cannot be treated as just another death. If this is not a trigger point, yes, I can understand that Charlie Hebdo was the first experience, Anupu Sharma was a threat, you didn't matter. But it's happening here, in America, in Europe, in India, where the intransigence of a particular faith is being allowed as a process of appeasement, pandering, and trying to make them integrated in your way of life. Anybody remembers Salman Rushdie? And I'm wondering what he is talking about doing there. He received a fatwa many years ago for his book, The Satanic Verses. And as many years later, in United States, he was attacked on his stage and nearly killed. He suffered grievous injuries. But I want Salman Rushdie to rise, to say that this isn't acceptable anymore. It never was acceptable. It cannot be acceptable even today. We are living in a civilized world, not in a prehistoric animalistic world where violence was the rule of the game. Thank you very much for watching. We have to stand for the truth. And as I always say, Satyame Vijayate, truth must prevail and win. Thank you.